I was coming through town a couple of weeks ago, actually, well, a couple of months ago, and a tree service was taking down a very large oak tree on a church ground. They were doing some landscaping stuff, and they were taking this tree down. So I stopped in there and asked, you know, can I get some of that wood? Of course. And, but anyway, the tree surgeon said, sure, you can have, you can have all of it you want. All he was going to do was take it to the landfill. So I got a couple pickup truck loads of this oak right here. It's got a lot of nice spalting in it on both ends, all the way through. And this piece here is about 11.5 inches long. I'm going to try to make a vase, a tall vase, and I've got a vase in the house that my wife bought, and it's I really like the shape of it. It's really wide at the bottom section, and it arcs down to a base, but it's got a cove at the top, a fairly deep cove, and it flares out really wide at the top. So I like that shape, and I'm going to try to do that same thing with this one. When I get it roughed out, the maximum that it can possibly end up being is about 5 1/4 diameter at the widest point. Once I true this up and get the bark off and stuff like that, probably be a little bit smaller than that. But we're going to chuck this thing up. I'm going to put it between centers first, the spur center and my conical tailstock center. And we're going to true this thing up. I'm going to put a tenon on both ends. I may end up actually gluing tenons on this because it's almost a foot tall, and I want to keep it about a foot tall, as close as I can to that. But I'll put a tenon on the top, a tenon on the bottom. It'll probably be glued up from glue blocks, and that way I won't waste any wood as I go, and I can keep the maximum height. But anyway, we're going to get this thing on the lathe, and we're going to get this thing trued up and see what we can get out of it. This spalting is really, I think it's really going to be pretty. But now oak is kind of a porous wood. It's very tough. It's very strong, but it is porous. And if you want to get some type of glossy finish, which I'm going to try to do with this one, I'll be using a spray lacquer on this one for a really glossy finish. We have to fill in these little pores and stuff in the oak. So anyway, let's get started on it right quick, and we'll see what we can get out of it. Alright, well, let's just get started trying to rough this thing out. Alright, well, you're going to have to put one tenon on one end of it, and it's going to be this end here because I have less spalting on this end than I do this one. So I'm going to put my tenon on this end and just take it off of the waist side, but I'm going to true up both ends. I'm going to put a tenon down here. This will be the top. I'll true this up, and I'll put a waist block on it. Alright, let's see. That's my lowest point. My lowest point there. Yep, okay, good. Now, I'll true that up and make a true cylinder out of it. And I'll put a tenon down here. Let's see here. There it is. Keep everything nice and tight. Alright, well, I've got my tenon down on this end. Everything's trued up, got a good solid shoulder, and about a 1/2 inch tenon down here. So my jaws are nearly closed, so I've got a good tight joint there. So what I've done now is I've got this piece of mahogany here. I've got my center point there, and I just put it up on the lathe just like so, and I drew a circle on it so I'll know where to glue. All these corners and things like that, they'll come off in the turning. Now I'm just going to glue this on. Just going to use some tight bond. I think that mahogany will make a nice cap for this thing. I really like the way that mahogany looks when it's finished. It just it's beautiful. Right. Get the glue on really well. And this spalted wood is very porous, especially here on the ends. So I'm going to put the glue on really thick so it can get in that end grain there. And but what I've done here is I've trued it up, and I've actually concaved this. It's nice and flat here, but it's concave just a touch here, just to help me hold it in place. Always move your piece around a little bit and move that glue around so it can get where it needs to be. I'm going to put a little bit of clamping pressure on it, and I'll have to wait for that to cure up. But this is going to form, actually it'll probably be a recess here. It'll form a recess so I can use the entire height of the mahogany on the final piece. So let's see what size we've got. We're about 11 1/4. That'll be just fine. This side down here will be an arc, and this up here will be a fairly deep cove flaring out pretty wide at the top here. And that's what I'm looking for. And I'll be back when that glue's dry. Alright, we're just going to get to shaping on this thing. And you can use a roughing out gouge for the main part of your shaping if you want to. It's not a bad idea, but I get a lot better control with my bowl gouge. That's just what I prefer using. So I'm going to be using a bowl gouge on this. My 1/2 inch bowl gouge. I'm just going to start trying to form this arc here. Okay, about halfway is where I want to stop this. Is where I want to transition from the arc to the cove. So let me get my ruler out and go ahead and see if I can't lay that out a little bit before I get too far ahead of myself. Alright, so half of 11 is 5 1/2 plus 1/8, that's 11 5 1/2 5/8. Okay, that should be same on both ends, and it is. Alright, let's go ahead and mark that right quick. Alright, just continue on. Use a little bit heavier gouge. mean by a planing cut, I'm using the edge, using the wing. What I mean by a planing cut is I'm using the wing of my gouge to roll this out. And once you find your shaving, just like that, it takes a very, very thin layer right off. It's just like using a skew, really. And it's not a scrape. A scrape is with the face pretty much closed up on the piece. And but this is an actual cut. You're rubbing the bevel, and it's going to smooth all this out for me. Almost like a lid. Alright, well, now I've got all the outside rough shaping done. What I'm going to start doing is I'm going to cut this thing in half, and I'm going to turn this half, and I'm going to turn this half. I'm going to have to put me a recess in the bottom to accept my chuck, and but I'm going to cut that off right there. I'm going to go ahead and put me a recess in the bottom right there so I can get that top part in my chuck. Don't want to forget that. If you forget that, you've done kind of messed up there. Alright, well, I'm going to get set up for that, and I'll be right back. Alright, getting ready to bore this hole. I've marked my Forstner bit. It's a 2-inch Forstner bit. That's the smallest capacity my jaws will do in expansion mode. So I've gone 3/8 of an inch deep right here, made a mark. And I'm just going to fire up the lathe and just start running this in nice and easy. Always start off nice and easy. That way your Forstner bit will run true. Once your teeth start biting, then you can be a little bit more aggressive running this thing in. That mahogany is pretty hard. Alright, there's my mark. That recess should be really good for my chuck. Alright, I got one more little trick I'm going to have to do before I'll be ready to cut this thing. I'm going to bore a hole down through here past the middle. That way I know when I chuck each side up, I can bring my center up, and this thing will be true. Without some type of reference inside there, it makes it really hard to do. So I'm going to try to run a 1/2 inch drill bit in here. I don't know how well that's going to work out, but we'll see. Get set up for it. Alright, I'll be back in just a minute. Alright, just getting ready to bore this hole. What I've had to do is I had to take my drill with a 1/2 inch bit and just make me a little starter hole. Now I'm just going to use this. I need to mark it the shavings to get between the drill bit and the wood, where it really gets it kind of mixed up there. And it should bore a hole right down the middle. Just take your time doing this. Do it until you get all the way to your mark. And I'll be back in just a few minutes. One thing to think about when you're doing this is as this thing gets deeper and deeper, you build up more and more friction on this thing, and it really gets hard to hold. I've just got this little handle made for it, and it looks like I've got about another inch to go. So what I did, I put wax on here. I'm going to see if that'll work, if that'll help loosen everything up a little bit and make it slip better. I think that's going to work. I think that's going to work fine. I've got to find my mark. There it is. If I can go a little bit deeper, that might help me a little bit later on when I start hollowing. So if this thing really starts getting tight before it actually locks up and you can't get it out, put a little bit of wax on it. I just used my finishing wax. It was just a paste wax, and it made it slick enough to work right there. So give that a shot if you start having trouble boring. Alright, I'm going to get set up to cut this thing in half. Alright. Now all I'm going to do now is, in this little V-cut here, is I'm just going to get my hacksaw in here, and I'm going to cut this thing most of the way through, and then I'll go over to the bandsaw and I'll go on through with it. I've got pressure on the tailstock holding all this nice and true, so once you start getting close to that, this thing's going to start catching, and it'll be wanting to pinch. It's really hard to work with, so bandsaw is actually the best way to go with that. But with this oblong shape, it's hard to get it on the bandsaw. So all I'm going to do is just start in that groove. Keep your hacksaw moving. And just let it go. Let it work. Sometimes it takes a little while for it to cut through because it's really not designed for this. Once I get a little bit, and I'll just take it over to the bandsaw. I'm getting down there pretty good already. Alright. Now I'll just take it over to the bandsaw and finish that cut. I'll be back when it's done. Alright. Got her mounted back up. Now I'm going to try to bore a hole down to the bottom here, and I'm going to try to use a 2-inch Forstner bit. That'll just help me, that'll just be waste that I don't have to remove. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to measure this thing out, lay this flat across there, pull it out until I get about a 1/4 inch from the bottom, lock it down. And I'll mark it on my Forstner bit here, which will be, well, it'll be, okay, I can see where it's at. Alright, so when I pull my Forstner bit up, right back here where the Morse taper goes into the head of the chuck, once it gets there, I'll be at the right depth. But I'm going to go ahead and get that started now. Start trying to bore this out, and see what we get. I'm hoping I won't have much problems getting this thing centered. and we're just going to get her going. Very easily. Alright, the hollowing tool I'm using is, it's basically a round nose scraper. It's a 1/4 inch round nose scraper. Make sure when you come in with a scraper that you come in a little bit high of center, so you can come up with your tool, and your tool's not presented straight or up like this. That's very aggressive, and you can really throw your piece off your lathe if you're not careful. So I always try to come in a little bit high, and just so I can tilt the tool down just ever so slightly, and to get in there and cut that out. But I've turned my headstock a little bit, just a little bit out of square with the bed, so I don't have to reach over the bedways to try to get in here and see what's going on. Let's see what we get. Alright, now I'm starting to get a little thin, so what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to start watching my thickness with my calipers. I'll run them down a little bit thick here. Now right down here at the very bottom, from about here down, I'm going to leave some extra wood in there just for a little bit of weight on the very bottom. Not much, but just a little bit. From about here down is still my 2-inch mortise, but I'm leaving a little bit on the walls right there. Right here, I'm going to probably thin that out a little bit more, but this is going to be my glue joint, so I'm going to keep it, fairly kind of thick right there. But starting right about here, I want it really thin. I want it around 1/8. It's about 3/16 now. Down here it's about 1/4. Maybe 3/8. So it kind of tapers inward, so I need to take a little more off the bottom part and come up. What I'm going to do with that is I've made this round nose scraper out of an old joiner blade, and works really well, but I've made a large round nose scraper out of it. I just JB welded it onto a piece of 1/4 inch key stock, so it'll mount in here. Now I'm going to get ready to, this I'll use for my final wall thickness and for smoothing up the inside. Now, okay, looking really good, really good. And the way I measure this, you pinch down with this side of your calipers on the inside of your vessel, and that measurement reads on the other side. Alright, well, I sanded the inside here down to 220. I'm not looking for a really fine finish on the inside or nothing. Nobody will be able to get their hands down in here or anything. I've just got 2 coats of wax in there, and I made sure I got in all the pores. Rub it around real good and get it in all the pores. I just used Minwax finishing paste wax, or paste finishing wax. You can get it just about anywhere. You probably get it at Walmart if you wanted to, but I picked that up at Home Depot. So, but anyway, I'm not gonna video the top, doing the top part of the vase, because the steps are the exact same. So I'm just gonna do it, and I'll be back when I get ready to glue them back together. Alright, well, I had my headstock canted a little bit just now to hollow out the top and the bottom of this vase. Well, when you bring it back, if you bring it back and just lock it in place, these can be out of alignment here. You always want to make sure that your headstock and your tailstock align where the tips of these things touch, or where they can touch. That way you know you're back in alignment. And then everything should run true with that. Alright, I'm just going to get ready to start mounting this thing back up and get it glued up. Let's see, we'll take the bottom. Lock it down. Okay, just getting ready to glue them up. I'm just going to put them right back together. I'm going to put glue on the top part first. Lots of glue. Lots of glue. This is all in green, and it is Doty, or Spalted, or rotting, whatever you want to call it. But either way, whatever how you look at it, make sure both surfaces are clean too. If you got any little wood chips or anything like that stuck on them, and get them off, because they won't ever go back together right if you don't. Alright, let's see here. Go back together just like this. A little bit of a twist. Always give a little bit of a twist. That way you can ensure that the glue gets in all the end grain and everything else. So let's just kind of tighten it up just a little bit. Got some little bit of squeeze out going.